We have mentioned various players, their bright and dark sides, talked about coaches, and how important their role is in the formation and existence of a team. But there's one more thing that we have often overlooked until now. It's management. Just as the coaching staff can effectively build a team, improve their strategies, and develop new ones, good management creates the most comfortable conditions and resolves all issues that could distract players from their direct work. We could tell you about Liquid or Navi, who really care about everything that might concern the team, but then we would reinforce your rose-colored perception of the world. So today we'll talk about the reverse side, namely management that has become destructive and failed, and sometimes even scandalous. Evil geniuses. Let's start with Evil Geniuses, an organization that had rosters in many games. In CS, there were as many as 4 lineups, 1 main, 2 academies, and 1 women's team. It would seem that such a powerful and experienced organization, one of the oldest in esports, decorated with titles from many tournaments, shouldn't have ended up as the worst management club, but it ceased operations and completely left the esports market in all directions. And it's clear that this is primarily due to poor management. This is also confirmed by NAF, who was offered to join the EG in the 2022-2023 period. In his interview, he stated, "When I was talking to EG management, I don't want to go into detail. That was some of the worst management I think I've ever talked to, probably in my life. EG surely knows that as well. They're clearly not handling their team properly at all. I was like, Liquid is light years ahead of this organization, and I would be an idiot to go and join this team." First signs that things weren't good in the organization came with information that since December 2021, the International 2015 champion, Sumail, has been suing the company for breach of contract on the organization's part. It was then that the absolute negligence and indifference to other players became known, one of whom was Danny from their League of Legends roster. Danny himself was a rising star of the League of Legends scene and had high hopes from fans. However, over time, these same fans began to have questions when he wasn't placed in the main roster at one of the tournaments. As it would later turn out, Danny had psychological problems. Particularly, he was diagnosed with autism, and during MSI 2022 in Korea, his condition began to worsen due to a tight schedule and lack of support from both the team and management. From 2022 to 2023, the company lost 5 of its sponsors at once, led by the title sponsor Monster, with whom they had collaborated for over 10 years. The same fate befell Thunderpick, who had just signed an advertising contract for 2 disciplines and 5 rosters, when soon after, 2 CS academies were closed, and the South American Dota 2 lineup was disbanded. 2023 became the year when many companies, due to a hidden crisis, as some now call it, were forced to reduce staff. Amazon, Twitch, Riot Games, and others. EG also fell under this distribution. But while others were laying off people and either looking for worthy replacements for key personnel or training others, EG simply distributed the work to those who remained. And even those losses that would have been logical due to reputational risks became catastrophic in terms of the company's functioning. So where are we going with this? Yes, 2023 became quite unprofitable for many esports organizations. FaZe Clan and Heroic went bankrupt and were forced to change owners, but they managed to stay afloat even by taking radical measures. Richard Lewis calls this period an economic downturn based on the fall of the advertising market, revaluation, excess spending, and lack of stable funding sources. Yes, there were no great results from the teams. You can blame it on that. Sponsors refusing to cooperate. You can also say that they're so bad for leaving us without money. But all this comes down to management problems. When this component doesn't work properly, it's hopeless to expect that anything else will feel better. Team Secret. We're usually accustomed to thinking of Team Secret as a player-led organization headed by Puppy. After TI4 gathered under its tag, all those who believed they could achieve much more than they had in their previous teams. And for the first while, this was indeed the case. But as time passed and the organization grew larger and stronger by esports standards, other negative aspects began to emerge, casting a significant shadow on its leadership and management. In early 2015, the organization announced that it had begun collaborating with the not well-known son of Turkish oligarch Kemal Sadikoglu. Quite not a lot is known about Kemal himself. His money is an inheritance from his billionaire father, which he managed rather carelessly. This includes huge donations in games and hiring escorts in the form of models and porn stars. In 2015, besides Dota and CS continuing to capture more and more fans, mobile games began to be added to the esports scene. One of these was Clash of Clans. I'm sure many of you know it. Kamal was also a fan of this game, where he donated mercilessly. Another such fanatic was George Yao, who by various estimates donated about $1,000 to the game. Thanks to that, he held the first place in the world ranking in the game for almost half a year. This led him to bankruptcy and debt, but it turned out that his guild mate was our Kamal, who decided to help George. At first, he paid Yao to look after Kamal's account when he wasn't able to, and then he signed him to the organization as a Clash of Clans esports athlete. Many of you may recall stories about Team Secret being portrayed in a negative aspect regarding prize payouts to players. This was reported not only by players like Misery or Eternal Envy, who leaked a conversation with Kamal about this, but also by former manager Evany. From all these materials, it became known that Kamal repeatedly ghosted responses in conversations, or claimed that everything was done on his end, and it was other employees who were not properly fulfilling part of their duty. Kamal himself stated in various interviews that he had no goal of making money from esports at all, but only a desire to give worthy players the opportunity to express themselves and engage in their favorite activity. Yeah, right, we totally believe that, especially considering that his reign coincided with the period when prize pools were growing at a colossal rate and were the main driver of everything in esports. As for worthy players, that's a separate topic. Almost immediately after the payout scandal, Secret, led by Kamal, signed a female CSGO roster, which included, well, not very strong players, to put it mildly. However, probably for him, attractive enough to organize their boot camp at his own villa in Turkey. The apogee of all previously described was the International Six. From the conversation leaked by Envy, it became known that for this TI, Kamal decided to empty the company's wallet on things that weren't really necessary. Thus, the organization had models and porn stars in its reserve, purchased drones and other expensive equipment, tickets and hotel for TI for some organization representatives not even related to Dota, in particular several representatives of their CS roster. In addition to the fact that players waited for their prize money for 6 months or more, it turned out that the organization was taking 10% from each of them, which wasn't in the contract. Obviously, the organization didn't like the combination of factors created by Kamal, and at the beginning of 2017, he was fired, and John Yao took his place. You might ask who this is? Well, it's the brother of that same George Yao from Clash of Clans, who, as it turned out, became the media director. Interestingly, as of now, George is no longer listed as anyone in management, but John remains in the CEO position. We could also tell you about how Puppy offered to resolve conflicts with fistfights one-on-one, but we'll leave that for future episodes. If you're interested in hearing about it, you know where to write about it. Alliance. On the one hand, we're used to remembering Alliance as the team that won the International 2013, gave us one of the best grand finals, and as a team of Swedes who struck fear into their opponents. But on the other hand, the last few years force us to smile sarcastically and only nostalgically remember past victory. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when things went off plan for the organization, but approximately it started when Loda transitioned from the position of coach to CEO, and in fact became responsible for everything happening with the team. The most fatal blow for the organization was the relegation from the second division of DPC Western Europe in 2023. But it's worth understanding what things led to Alliance ending up in this second division in the first place. The first factor that can describe all the failures of the tag is the completely incomprehensible roster formation process. It seemed that Loda was either simply rolling dice to choose who would play in the team, or visiting a fortune teller who made her predictions. Whatever it was, this process is truly shrouded in mystery for anyone who understands even a little about players, their capabilities, and potential. Here are, for example, several extremely absurd decisions that defy any logical analysis. The choice of Nico Baby, Limp, and Handskin instead of Fata and 33, who proved in Alliance that they were the driving force of this collective, kicking Limp, S4, and FNG, and instead signing Supreme, Lilis, and Aramis. At that time, no analyst, commentator, or more or less public figure associated with Dota could find explanations for these rosters. Throwing out strong players, keeping unstable ones, parting ways with experienced, and again the best among the five who could be the voice of the team in exchange for young players without leadership ambitions. We don't know what exactly Dota saw in Nikobaby or what the latter promised, but for some reason, most of the rosters formed in recent years were built around the latter. Yes, we remember that during the times when Nikobaby played for Mineski, he was described as a very promising and not fully revealed player. In truth, he has remained so to this day, obviously still promising and ambitious, but there's one nuance, as they say. The only ray of hope and faith for fans was the signing of Weeha, with whom they managed to get out of the second division, losing only to the Goon Squad stack where Limp, S4, and Hanskin played, who were previously kicked from Alliance. But success in the second division, keeping the roster for games in the next season within the first division, led to nothing. The last tour of 2021-22 again threw Alliance into the second division, where they floated for a year, after which they were relegated from there too. Catastrophically unsuccessful player selection, obviously not very high quality communication, and failed management of the organization in general. Absolute indifference to the company's tone of voice. After all, if we recall the conflict between Nikobaby and Kelly against Kyle, the Alliance representatives in the form of a player and team manager absolutely didn't spare words and profanity, while having Monster, Razer, and Twitch as sponsors, which had already become quite strict about expressions. So if you're a titled player in the past, have a bunch of awards, and a reputation as a worthy player, this is not a guarantee that as a manager you will be able to achieve similar successes, especially when you perform your duties not very well. It's worth mentioning how the Dota roster manager was looking for players simply through a Twitter post, and at TI10, instead of a coach, analyst, or people who could help the team, Dota himself went and guess who? That's right, the team cook. Oh yes, at some point Alliance decided to try themselves in South America under the tag Alliance Latam. Should we talk about the results, or can you guess yourself? Interesting, did Dota even follow the matches in this region, given the 6-hour time difference? Don't forget about your likes and subscriptions. Help us become the #1 Ukrainian esports channel. Good game!